behind the scenes, it was a small group of people that were doing everything.
Welcome back to the GTM podcast. It's your host, Scott Barker.
I want to know how this insane growth actually happened.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the GTM podcast. As always, we appreciate you lending us your eardrums for the next 40 minutes. We will do our best to share real world stories, actionable advice, and hopefully you leave this with some takeaways. I know I certainly will, because this next guest I've been very excited to have on for a while now. I am joined by the infamous Elissa Fink. Elissa, welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you, Scott. I'm doing good. I'm glad you didn't say notorious or something. Although maybe being notorious would be great.
Notorious is kind of badass. I'd take notorious. How are you doing? How is Seattle as nice as Vancouver is right now? It's an absolutely beautiful day up here.
Glorious. I recently moved my office into our spare bedroom, the guest bedroom, which we never have guests anymore. But anyway, so it's my office, and it's got my desk. I'm looking over like mountains and water. It's spectacular. I mean, and it's gloriously blue, clear day. It's the days you move to the Pacific Northwest for. In fact, when I joined Tableau, when I joined Tableau, or before I joined Tableau, I came out for an interview, and it was a May day, and it was exactly like this. It was perfect May day, and I was like, "What is everyone complaining about? The Pacific Northwest in rain and gray. It's gorgeous." Of course, it is in May.
Yes. The Pacific Northwest will fool you. If you come in the summertime, everyone's like, of course I'm moving here. And then you have to get through September, October, November, December, and the seasonal depression that comes with it. But this makes it all worth it, for sure.
It really does. It really does.
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I love the GTM Fund and your team, you and everybody involved with it. So it's a great fun and a great group.
Amazing. Well, we appreciate your support. And for those listeners, if you haven't heard of Elissa, I'll do a super quick bio. So Elissa Fink now serves on several not-for-profit and corporate boards. Retired from Tableau Software in 2019 after 11 years. Yes, you heard that right. 11 years is like 50 in SaaS years as their CMO. And she helped grow the company from 5 million to over 1 billion in revenue. Truly a historic run, and helped lead it through IPO and enterprise growth. And you left right before the big acquisition by Salesforce. You also have an MBA in marketing, which I feel like is pretty uncommon to actually have that credential. And now you get to enjoy a little more time with your husband, teenage daughter, and your son. Are you enjoying this chapter of life?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's fun. In fact, it was hard to choose to retire, but it was a lot because of kids. My daughter was 11 at the time, and now she's 16. But I was at 11. I was like, well, she still likes me, but in a couple of years, she's going to hate me. And then she's going to be gone to college, So she doesn't hate me, but it's been so fast. The past few years have been so fast. So it's great to be around her and my son and my husband and serving on these boards. I've been really, really lucky. Yeah, it's been fun.
You still get that feeling of growth and contribution, which is so important. So I have to ask, 11 years, what made you stay? I feel like companies really have a hard time retaining great executives. They're in high demand. What about Tableau made you stay?
Well, I guess, first, I mean, it's just the intrinsic match to the mission and the kind of culture it was. I love data. I've always loved data. I've never been a trained data user. So just the mission to bring data and analytics to ordinary people doing their jobs is just something I just really related to as a worker. And then, of course, the culture, the kind of culture that it was very authentic, open. Be who you are. Bring your full self to work. Don't fake who you are. You don't have to disguise yourself. As a kind culture, so it was those great things that really kept me there. But then I think part of it too is like it doesn't feel like 11 years at one company. It felt like maybe 2 or 3 years at 4 or 5 companies. That kind of thing. because you are going through these different phases and the company is evolving and changing. So I can think of Tableau in my years in very distinct phases. Like the early years when I joined in 2007, we were about 5 million in revenue when I joined. I think 30, 35 people, something like that. That couple of years when you're just not even known, you can't even get arrested for saying something stupid or obnoxious. You can't do it. You just try to build it up one person at a time. And then you get a little traction and you're sort of like stage 1 or stage 2, and you're sort of coming along, you're coming into your own, you're realizing that you're building things to repeatable things. And that's fun. It's still a bit of a sneaker net, but you're adding people. And then there's the stage where you're like, we're scaling, and the stuff we built that automated and helped process or whatever are breaking. So what are we going to really build, and what are we going to do, and how are we going to grow up? You're kind of teenagey, and then you're like a young adult. You're going public, and great things are happening, but you're learning the hard things too. As a young adult, you're facing it on your own. You're fighting with competitors who previously ignored you. Now you got a target on your back. And then you get into adulthood. You're like a full grown adult. You're working. You're competing. You're winning. You're losing. Good things are happening. Some bad things are happening. It's like that old saying about baseball teams: you're winning a third of the time. You're losing a third of the time. It's what you do with the other third. And so you're working for that other third. So you become sort of mature and wise. So to me, it just felt like a great journey through all those different companies with the same people that I respected and admired. And we had a shortcut kind of language with each other. So it was easier. It's never easy to work through those hard times of each of those phases.
Hmm. That's a great baseball analogy. I like that one.
Yeah, it's really true in the world of startups, I think too. I think you got to let the losses go, because some losses are inevitable. Some screw ups are inevitable. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's going to happen. Did you learn from it? Are you going to play better next time? And are you going to apply what you learned to the other third that you are going to have to work for? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Applied to startups and to life, I
To
think
life
was,
too, frankly. Yeah, it's true.
yeah,
Yeah, it's so true.
totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So as you look through those distinct stages, I imagine marketing as a function evolves. And how did you see the role of marketing change through those different stages of growth?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, definitely evolved. It definitely evolved. And as a leader, I had to evolve a tremendous amount. So in the early days, and it's hard for any founders that are listening, those super early days. I joined when Tableau was about 5,030,000 people, so I wasn't the first marketer, but I was pretty early. And those early days, man, you can't afford to just bring in senior leadership talent that isn't doing. You know what I mean? You are doing as much as you are coaching or advising or leading. And so, I thought about like, hey man, I got to be a good marketer. I got to be up on what works, what doesn't work. I got to be up on the technology. I got to be up on the experimentation. I got to be a good writer. I've got to learn the HTML code, Believe it or not, I'm sure. Well, there were remnants on the website for many years where they'd say, piece of crap code is this? And I'd be like, that's me. Yeah. But you got to do, and you got to hire people who can do. But then as you grow, you really, and it's not that they don't think, it's just that you do have to think intelligently and be strategic, but you also don't have as many options. You don't have as many options. So you need to hire people who can get stuff done on a shoestring, be very guerrilla. But they need to think. And then as you get bigger, it's like now you're starting to build processes and technologies and capabilities and teams and hiring, making those first critical hires in your marketing team, and what kind of hires, and where are you going to focus your go-to-market efforts. And so now you're starting to need to be more strategic and more deliberate. But meanwhile, you're still playing. You know what I mean? You're still, getting in there. And today I'm building a trade show booth and tearing it down. And tomorrow we're doing the 5-year strategic plan. That's just what has got to happen. And then gradually, as you're starting to build your team up, and teams are building teams, it's like now you're leading with culture, and you're leading with values, and you're leading with goals and objectives, and you're no longer telling people what to do or supervising work. You're managing, but you're actually asking people who work for you to lead, to manage, to supervise work, to get objectives accomplished. You can't control everything anymore. You got to let it go. There's things you just got to know. What is the objective? What is the major objective? And what is the what is the tolerance for what's right, and getting people to learn and grow and build their own teams. And then comes the phase of where, well, man, you're in a position where you are setting an example, where and you are setting the direction, and you are inspiring people and leading them and showing them that you care about them and that where the company's going, and you're explaining, and you are not doing as much of your core skill, for me, marketing, but you're ensuring that the marketing that's being done is right for the company and it's right for the brand. And how are you doing that? Through leadership and through influence, with your organization and with other organizations and partners and vendors and all that kind of good stuff. So it's you have all these different kinds of ways of thinking about how you accomplish your core objectives, which at Tableau was always about, like, what's the demand? What is the pipeline? What are we doing for sales? How are we getting customers? What are we doing for our customers? How are we building community? Are we selling? Are we upselling? Are we bringing in bigger customers? You always have that underlying all those different things I described as a management or leader, but you do them differently. And your role and how those things get executed or accomplished changes. It changes. So yeah, it's something that you can grow with. Sometimes you come in with a lot of those skills, and sometimes you learn them along the way. And I think for me, some of those things I came in with, and some of those things, well, I learned. I had to learn, or I failed a little and then I learned, or maybe I failed a lot and then I learned. I don't know what it is, but it's a fun journey, and it is important to every once in a while stop and think, okay, who am I and how am I doing this? And is this what we need right now? Is this what we need right now? And how am I going to evolve to be what we need, what this company needs, what we want to accomplish together? And I think you're more willing to make those changes when you believe in the mission and the company and the culture, and you feel like this is where you belong. I always felt like this is where I belong. And so you're willing to learn and evolve because this is where you belong, with these people doing this thing for your customers.
Hmm. Such a fascinating journey and a lot to unpack there. This journey of doing the thing, then you're building the thing, and then you start hiring more, and then you have to make this jump to being more strategic, and then it's more about leadership and culture and values. Then, like I heard, almost like defining excellence and doing that through example and inspiration. So I love go to market and everything scaling companies, but the only thing I'm more fascinated about is people and humans, and that the amount of personal growth that you have to do to be all of those people in a short period of time is an immense personal journey. What did you fall back on? Like, how did you get there? Was there mentors in your life? Was there books that had a big impact? Did Tableau set you up with different training that was helpful? Like, how did you make those jumps? Because that's, you know, the company growth aside, the personal growth is I imagine an intense journey.
Yeah, yeah, it is intense. Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny. So I mean, when I joined Tableau, oddly enough, I was like, usually startup is a young person's game, or you think of it that way. And I wasn't particularly young. I was in my 40s, early 40s, to be honest. And, I hate to admit it nowadays, but anyway, that's true. And so some of those things I had experienced, so you kind of are drawing on different parts of your experience. Like I had been a CMO for a smaller company. I had done a lot of analytics in my day. I worked with a lot of data as a marketer, so and I had built small teams and hired people, fired people. I have some funny stories about that, but some sad. It's hard. It's hard to do that. So some of it was drawing on experience, but also a lot of it was drawing on observation. So as you go through your career and your startup journey, it's really valuable to take a look at what other people are doing around you, especially leaders or managers or people that you admire. You like the way they work. How are they doing these the kinds of things? Because I think when you have a job right now, or hopefully you do, and you work with people, and observing some of the people who are in roles that maybe you hope to be in and aspire to, how they handle things is a really interesting thing to do. So to be around it, to be around excellence is a really important thing, and it helps you grow because you see it and you can emulate it. You see a model for it. So I think there's a lot around that. And so that I think is a reason why you should always seek to work with quality people, good quality people, not just like I was just talking to someone who was describing someone she has to work with in a partner organization that's just incredibly difficult, like just, horror stories. And that happens. But it's, she's learning because she's learning to deal with difficult, very difficult people, but certainly not learning from example or learning. She's struggling with how do I deal with this person because she doesn't have a model for how to deal with somebody so difficult. So by watching people around you, and then I think, classically, ask for help, interview people, mentor. I wasn't, I look back and I wish I had taken advantage of that more. You just get so busy sometimes in a startup. You put your head down and then you put it up and it's like 6 months later and, you just don't even realize what just happened. So taking the time to take time for improving yourself, which it doesn't have to be formal. You don't have to take classes. In fact, for some companies, it's not in the budget and, it costs money or time, whatever. But taking a time each week to sort of reflect or read something or talk to someone or, reach out to someone in your network or even outside of your network. I'd love to have a half-hour conversation and just learn how you handle whatever. How did you handle the CMO trajectory? You'd be surprised at how many people are willing to talk to others and share their experience. And so I think it's just being deliberate about the opportunities to use and generalize from your own experience, to look for role models around you who you see how they're doing things. And because you get up close, sometimes you get up close and you can see what's going on. And then third is just asking for help, just asking for advice or input or just, talking to people. What did you do? Or, just learning from them. I think those three things are super helpful. Super helpful. And I guess the fourth and ultimate thing is, well, you fail and then you learn from that. So that's the other way you evolve. Well, I screwed that up. Okay, next time I'm not going to screw that up.
I like that. Fantastic advice, and I agree. There's no better teacher than failure, and you have to look at failure through that lens, and then it becomes a little less scary. Awesome. So I want to transition to story time, kind of my favorite part of this podcast. And we were chatting before this, and there's a lot of interesting ones. So I wish we had like 4 hours, and I could just pick your brain on all of them. But for the sake of time, there is one that I thought was super interesting, will be relevant to the audience. And so Tableau back in the day made the decision to start the Tableau conference super early on. It's like 12 million in revenue. That seems like, wow, this could be like a big cost center. It's a big investment, time, resources. Walk me through that decision-making process, how that came to be and how you pulled it off.
Well, before I even joined Tableau, I read the job description. I thought this is a crazy, interesting company. What they want to build, I love it. And then I had discovered the product along the way as well, and I was just like in love with the product. I was like, wow, this is how I wanted to work with data my whole life. But then I also did my research. You're like, oh, who is this company? It was tiny, but when I started researching it, I noticed that people who were the customers loved the product, and I was like, wow, this company has an asset that you don't always see, and that is this customer love. Like people love it, they want to share it. And so when I came in, I was like, this is an asset. This is an asset. This small tiny set of customers that wants to talk or wants to share, wants to show what they did. And so the more as I got into Tableau, the more I realized like, wow, people were just, this is an asset. People were, interested in sharing and learning more. This was a new way of working with data. And so many of the people who we were customers with were not actually trained analysts. And so it was an idea where I thought about it before I even joined, but I was like, this company should have a conference. And I'd been involved in other companies' conferences. And I thought this is people would be willing to come together. And if we put a really high focus on education and training and sharing of quality ideas and quality information, whether we're doing or customers, we can get people to come here and treat it like not as a conference, but as an educational expense, and they could find budget for an educational expense kind of thing. And so I brought the idea forward to my boss, the CEO, and he was a little like, well, yeah, okay, I could see that, sort of, but let's talk to the other execs. And so brought it forward to the other execs, and a couple of them were like, are you crazy? A couple of them were like, it's way too early. And And then another one was like, that's going to cost too much. So you can guess who probably said that one, right? So I said, well, wait a minute, let's talk about like how I could pull this off. Neutral cash. Like we're going to collect fees to attend. And since we're so heavy on the education and the training, it's going to be a fee that isn't going to be seen as just boondoggle conference. This is going to be seen as training. So some of the things we did were offer hands-on training for free as part of the conference. So you could sell it as training, and it was training. So we put together a lot of scenarios. I put a lot of budgets together to show the possibility, what would be the different scenarios, where could we do it, would there be a space, would people come to Seattle? And just as we talked about at the top of the hour, people will come to Seattle in the summer. We can't afford to go out of Seattle for our first conference and maybe never. So it just was a lot of back and forth. Fortunately, the CEO, Christian Chabot, believed, he said, yeah, I think you're right. I think we can do this. We can do this. And okay, if you can make it cash neutral, like it's not going to cost us any output money, it's all going to be our manpower. And we're going to put on together a high class event. And he and our chief development officer, the other co-founder, Chris Stolte, insisted that the quality, like that was a thing we had where, oh yeah, it's going to be like education. He's like, no, it is going to be education and it's going to be super high quality. And anybody who gives a session from our company is going to be walked through it. And every session is going to be reviewed by me and Chris and Christian. And we are going to make sure this is a super great. So I got a lot of commitment from the CEO that we could pull this off, that we had enough interest to do. I said, I think we could get 120 people. I think I said 110 and I was hoping for 120. And we ended up getting like 180. And
Wow.
so, And so then we pulled it off. And I remember everybody was so thrilled. And I remember turning to my event planner and event manager at the time and saying, this was fantastic. Everything went great. I guarantee in 3 years, we're going to say, God, what amateurs we were. Yeah.
And did you?
Right now, yes. Yeah, right now we feel like, oh, what pros. We're so great. That was not we're so great, but that was great. And then we're going to feel like, oh boy, that was really dopey, but it wasn't. I mean, it was an event that was just really, but it was it had its hokey moments. But I think it was this idea. First, we started with the customer. We started with like, what is the customer going to get out of this? And do we have enough customers who would get enough out of this that they would be willing to come forward and be part of this? And it really was thinking of them very personally. Who would come? Who would we invite? How would the salespeople invite them? Why would they come? Just really thinking about that customer experience at the center of it. Why would they spend their money and their time on this? And so just making sure that it was a great experience and a great, it met the objective for the customer, which was like an amazing training education event, first and foremost. And then it was about us. It was then about like, hey, let's get our customers together and we might be able to sell some more software. We might be able to invite other people to it. We might be able to get them to expand. We might be able to get them to bring a boss or a colleague, that kind of thing. But first we started with the customer. And that started with recognizing that, yeah, there were enough of them that would be willing to come and pay money to participate in a highly educational, community-oriented, collaborative event. Yeah, so that's kind of how it started. Now, I had to, again, produce all those budgets to prove to the CFO, hey, we can do this. We can do it well. And, we're not going to spend money on some traditional things you might do at a conference. We're going to do these things. We're going to lean into the team and the staff. So the cool thing was because the CEO got behind, was so believed in it. And I look back and I think, wow, he took a huge risk believing in me because this was 2008. We did it in 2008 and I had just joined in the summer of 2007. So we started planning it like maybe 4 months after I joined the company. And so he trusted me pretty early on, but he believed and made a commitment and people in the company were willing to take jobs to do anything. So the other thing that was great was once the executive team bought into it and said, yeah, we're going to do this. The rest of the company got excited about it and they wanted to be a part of it and they were willing to make it. We could not have done it. Never could we have done a Tableau conference without everybody in the company or pretty close to every department in the company be involved in some really fundamental, important way. That's how we ran those conferences. It was not a marketing only event. It was marketing ran it and we were responsible for it. But man, we leaned into, people just gave us so much help. And they loved doing it. And everybody from the company went to the first conference, or many of the like maybe the first 10 years of conferences, everybody went. And there was turned out after the conference was over, there was this huge side benefit, but became almost a primary benefit. Because again, we're so focused on customers. A huge primary benefit, or a huge benefit, was the exposure that our developers and our back office people and our customer success people and sales people and even marketing people, whoever, got firsthand to talk to customers and see what they were doing and see what was going on. And that was huge. So, taking developers out of the office for 2 days and having them interact and meet with customers and just be available to customers was a huge move on our CEOs and our co-founders' decisions. The executive team, but they did it. And when we came back, it turned out to be one of the biggest benefits because it put everybody in the company first line with customers, and that just helps everyone do their jobs better. Even our HR folks used to say it helps them recruit better. It helps them, be able to manage people better. It was pretty crazy how valuable that turned out to be to the company. But again, it started with putting the customer at the center of like, why are we doing this, and what are they going to get out of it?
Yeah. So invaluable when you can get folks that aren't typically customer facing to get in front of them. That just like the culture that breeds too, like they just naturally want more of that, and it bleeds into their code they're writing. It bleeds into the people you hire. It's everything. It's infectious.
It totally is. And I think part of that formula of having them there was also everybody had jobs. So you didn't just go to the conference and hang out. You had a job. Like even our developers might be, we had a developer booth, where a developer lounge where people could go hang out to ask questions. We had this thing called Tableau Doctor where you could bring any problem. So we also made it like free consulting. Come to our Tableau Doctor. And it was a lot of developers. And so people would bring their laptops with Tableau and some problem or question they had. And they'd say, please help me solve this. And literally developers, like the most senior developers, were like, here's how you do that, or here's what we could do, blah, blah, blah. So they had this incredible interaction with this customer. Customer talked to these developers that were, these geniuses, but so committed to the product and to the experience of the product. I mean, just, again, everybody had a job and everybody was frontline with the customers. It was a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. I mean the scrappiness, the conviction, I love it. And also just the stake in the ground to have started like 4 months ago and you're like, yeah, we're gonna do this massive initiative. I could see
I know.
why, they obviously that was like the snowball effect where they just got more and more confidence in you.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was, yeah, we were very, I mean, and again, we had, my event manager was amazing. The few marketing people we had were amazing. The sales team was supportive. The CFO was supportive. We were managing cash at the time in these hotels and these deposits, all these things, and product management and product development, everybody, and sales, of course. I mean, everybody was. Once we committed, we're committed. We're committed. We're going to do this thing. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, it was pretty remarkable.
And did you hit the cash flow neutral? Did
Yes.
you live?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
I
yeah.
did. Yes. Yeah. Which was amazing because it's a really hard thing to do. And I think in today's world, there's no way we could have done it. No way we could have done it. In today's world, even for 180 people, prices are crazy. But we did. But the beautiful thing was in the successive years, let me tell you, we ran those Tableau conferences extremely tightly. Like we did not like to take a bath or not take a bath, like call it that, but we wanted to be as close to revenue neutral as we could be, or cost neutral. So
Even as
in
it scaled?
even as it scaled, as close as possible. But the beauty of the company realizing the primary one of the benefits was having everyone from the company there, is that the free workforce that was for the conference. A lot of our costs we were able to keep low because we had a free workforce in a way, and the company recognized, hey, this is extremely valuable to have everyone there. So you can go over to cover some of those costs, or we're not going to charge marketing for those costs to house those people, or to get them there. And then came a time when my boss was like, you know what, this conference actually, maybe it's okay to quote unquote lose money. Maybe it's a little okay to not have to hold so tightly, to give a great experience, As we got smarter about it, there was one or two conferences where we were just like, again, it was like our third or fourth conference when we left Seattle for the first time. And I remember telling my boss, I'm telling you right now, we're going to learn so much from this conference being our first one that's away, and we're going to mess things up and we're going to learn a ton, but we're going to learn a ton. And yeah, we messed things up. It was a fantastic conference, fantastic. But we were first time away, Vegas. They know what they're doing when they're charging you stuff. We went way over budget. I could have been fired for it, but I wasn't. But but you learn, you learn, and we realized like there's a lot of benefits to this conference that just aren't about the cost of the conference. But we were always so tight, though. We were always very careful about our budget and when we could spend what and how many people signed up for tickets and what was our ticket quotas and who was selling tickets. And, we did hardly give away any discounted tickets, any free tickets, hardly ever. So we ran it like a little business in a way. Yeah.
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 That's
Yeah.
very rare. Again, like these days, it's hard to get people to buy tickets. There's just so much knowledge out there that's free to consume that you're kind of like competing against. But that's kudos to the quality of content. I think that is kind of the best marketing in the world,
Yeah, I think
is
you're
that.
absolutely right. And I give a lot of credit to our CEO and our chief development officer. We knew we wanted to make it an education experience, but they were just like, look, it isn't just good enough. Or, people can't make speeches that haven't been vetted for weeks. And we even brought in, even in the early years, we brought in a speaker coach for some of our internal people so they would give great sessions. But all those sessions were reviewed by our CEO and our chief development officer and other people, and the chief product officer, I think, and the lead product manager at the time, myself. Like we went through these sessions and not just like, here's your outline, let's review it. Okay, here's what you change. Here's your first draft, let's review it. Okay, give us the first presentation. Okay, here's the things you need to change or fix. Give us your final content is due by this date. But it was a process for producing the education and the informational sessions that we were really serious about. We were really serious about that. And I do think you're right. I think it did lend to like people were happy to be there because it was great quality. And then when you lay on top the socialization, the social events, the community events, the nighttime parties, you have a little fun with those, you get creative, not expensive, but creative. Then it becomes this thing that's like a total experience. Like I'm here and it's worthwhile and I'm having fun and I'm connecting with people. And this is it just was a thing that then propagated itself through the years.
Yeah. Yeah. So it actually reminds me a lot of the first Outreach Unleash I was involved in. I think we probably took more than a couple notes from the old Tableau playbook
But
for
yeah,
sure.
but outreach has it's that kind of energy. It has that kind of community. People want to connect and learn from each other. And I think in order to have a conference, you definitely need to have that. You need to have people who want to come together and learn. I used to joke like we were fortunate that we weren't having like a good old fashioned big software company conference where they come to complain. You know, we didn't have that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so I want to talk quickly. So there's so much that you did right. If I could fly you back in time, anything you would do differently?
Oh gosh, that's such a great question. I mean, I think on a personal note, I look back and I think there are times, yeah, where like for me, I like, I don't know, should I do this or that? Let's try to do both. And so I think sometimes the both and is a powerful thing, but the power of no is incredibly powerful too. And I think one way that I would get around that problem, because I love to market, I love to do things, I love to see what happens out there. So, overcommitting is a bad thing. It burns people out, and I blame myself for times when people felt like I'm exhausted, I'm burned out, and I'm like, oh, that's me. I mean, I push people, and I want them to have fun. I'm trying to do it in a positive way, but it's still burnout. Even if it's positive. Um, but I think the way to do that is to do small experiments and really be careful about the size of those experiments and how frequently you do them and when you stop them. So we were really good at piloting things and experimenting or trying things, but then you got to turn them off if they don't work. You really have to use your data. And so I think what I learned is like, okay, the power of no is pretty powerful. That being said, you just don't want to miss opportunities. You know what I mean? I wanted to take advantage of opportunities, but being, smart about those opportunities, and being willing to take risks. I think sometimes people say no because of the power of no and not being focused. But I also think sometimes people say no because it's a high risk. And so, how do you de risk a project or a pilot or thing to try something and see if it's worth taking any further? And so, for me, that's a better way for me to say, are we going to do this or not? It's not the big upfront commitment and taking on too much, but the little experiments like, let's just try it. And if it works, let's do it a little more. And if it works, do even more. But then, okay, but how are we funding this? Who's working on it? What are we trading off? What are we giving up? You got to answer those questions as well. But yeah, I just personally learned a lot there where it's like, okay, there's just some times where, nope, I need more. I need more money. I need more people. I rarely would, I'm not a crier at work, but there was one time when I was really feeling like, oh my God. And I was, asking my boss for more employees and he was like, no. And I was just like, and I didn't burst out crying, but I started crying. He goes, okay, wait a minute. Okay.
This
Okay,
is
you can have
serious.
2 people. You don't cry and you're crying. You must really need these people.
That's the power of if you don't cry. If you do that 1 or 2 tears, those are pretty powerful
Pretty
things.
powerful tears. Yeah, totally. But anyway, I don't know if that's such an answer, but yeah, that was for me personally. And then I guess anything else I changed. I mean, I think there's some mistakes I made. Like we had a pretty big, to me, it was big, a big social media campaign we did against a competitor. And it was funny, but we weren't a company that should have that. We shouldn't be like attacking a competitor. It was funny, but it was attacking. And it came from a place, I approved it because it came from a place of, I hate that company. Those guys I hate them. And so it
We've all been
didn't
there.
come
We've
from,
all been there.
yes, but it didn't, the reason I said yes to this thing was not coming from a place of uplifting us and uplifting our customers and uplifting the market. It came from I want to take those people down. So I learned like when you want to do something that's coming from a place that's like, I'm going to get them, take a beat, take a beat, man. Cause it's probably not a good idea. Take it from me. It's not a good idea, yeah, I think that's another thing I like regret that because, and I learned, Elissa, don't do things that don't come from the right motive, the right motivation. Yes. Do you want to beat your competitors? Yes. But do you want to beat up your competitors? Let them beat themselves up. You're the better product. You're the better company. You're the better community. You've got, you don't need to use those kind of tools to beat up your competitors. But yes, can you beat them in the market? Yeah, we can beat them. We did beat them. But I just was like, I hate those guys. They're so obnoxious and yeah. And it came from not a good place. And it was a bad thing that I did. It was a stupid thing I did or I proved. And fortunately I had a lot of internal political capital with my sales team, because I always put the sales team and their needs are really high, really important. It's like build brand, build demand, same thing, man. We got to have the demand. We got to have the brand. And so I was fortunate because they were pretty mad that I had done that. But they were okay. I talked to a couple of them. I sent an email, explained it. And fortunately they cut me some slack, I mean, not that they had the power to say you're fired, but you don't want to damage your relationships when you do stupid stuff. So if you keep doing stupid stuff, you'll damage your relationships. But if you do stupid stuff and you've got a good relationship with people, they'll cut you the slack, and they did. Yeah. And the whole company cut me slack for that one because it was really not a good idea.
Yeah. Well, that is a very wise warning for all of our listeners. I feel like in everyone's career, you will be faced with maybe more than one opportunity to take a lower road. And sometimes it feels like the right thing to do because you're all fired up and we're all competitive and, but I think that's always go the high road, pull them into your arena, compete on the field, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, but and I was pretty experienced and pretty much I should have known better, but I was so subsumed
Emotions
by
took
that.
over, it sounds
Yes,
like.
totally.
Yeah.
Oh my God, totally. So it's like even though you know that, take a beat, man. Yeah, it's
Take a
easy to get
beat.
caught up in it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. I want to go now to our listener question. I think this one's super relevant. And you kind of almost answered it a little bit earlier when you came into Tableau and like immediately took on this big project, which is it's really great to put a stake in the ground. But the question is, I'm starting a new role as head of marketing at a startup. how can I come in and have a big impact in my first 90 days?
Oh, it's a great question. Yeah, well, so yeah, even relating back to the conference, I think one of the reasons that the company was like, okay, is because that I think I proposed the idea around December, January. So it's about 3 or 4 months after I joined. And then we ran it in July or in August. So we planned it in like 6 months, which was really fast, but it was only 180 people. So it's too bad. But I think one of the reasons they did is because the first 90 days, I was very focused on what the company needed right then, right? Like needed. Like I remember my boss when I got hired, he said, I want to be clear. We need leads. We need demand. And I don't want you coming in here and giving me this big song and dance of product marketing and messaging and that stuff. We need demand. And it was a funny thing though, because we need demand, but we also rebuilt our brand. We redefined the brand visually and messaging, the whole thing. That was the one project was rebuild the brand or build a new brand, build demand, introduce a brand new product and introduce a new website by November 8th, and I started in August. So, but so I had those are the 4 big projects: new brand, make demand work, build a new website, and introduce a brand new product by November 8th. You're starting on October 15th or 16th, I think it was. Get this done. So I think because we worked together, the 2 marketers that were there with me before I even joined, Amy and Wade and myself and a few others, and we all worked together. So I had the street cred. So, but it was very clear to me when I joined, what is this company looking for? Now, a lot of people, they have their 90-day plan. Of course, you come in and you assess and you try to understand the dynamics. But what you're really looking to do is, you're assessing, what am I trying to do? And are there some things you could do that really demonstrate that you're going to make a difference? And for me, it was pretty clear at the very early days, there was some product-led growth. I call it product-led growth now, but there were some PLG things that Tableau was product-led growth, but there were some tactics we were not doing that were like, okay, guys, if we just do this, it's going to raise leads. It's going to cause people to be more engaged. It's going to cause more people to install the trial and, use the trial and therefore buy the trial. So it was about results. It was about recognizing early on, what can I do in the short run that actually produces for this company so that I can start to build my political capital, my capital to do the really big things. And Scott, I've said this to other people before, and I'll say this to this person too. In B2B in particular, I said this to marketers, pipeline is permission. And what that means is kind of a shortcut way of saying what I just said, which is like, if you deliver what they need, and most B2B organizations need pipeline. If you're delivering pipeline, you have permission to do all the other crazy stuff you want to do. So the crazy stuff like run a conference for almost 200 people within 6 months of planning in 6 months within less than a year you've been on board when everyone thinks you shouldn't be even having a conference. That's why I had permission to do that, because when I joined, it was like, oh, I had a clear list, a mandate of these things to accomplish. And I put a lot of energy into, okay, that's what we're doing. We're going to make the salespeople happy with more leads, more quality leads. We're going to listen to them. We're going to, build that new brand. We're going to introduce that new product. We're going to have a new website. We're going to let's go team, and that gave me permission to do all those other things. So for your first 90 days, it's really like, yes, focus on the strategic, focus on, the system's broken or you can't process the data, blah, blah. But God, get some stuff done that people in other groups, particularly sales, can see your impact. So it's all about 90 days towards impact. Yeah.
Yeah. Put some points on the board, and they can be small wins. Just put some points on the board.
Put some points on the board. Exactly. Back to sports and put some points on the board, because that's going to help you get permission. And I hate to, it's just a sort of a funny acronym, pipeline is permission, but it gets you the access.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. No, it gets you access to what you need to say, trust me, CFO. I know I can run this conference. I know it's going to be good for us. I can break even on it. Trust me, head of product management. It seems early to you, but we got the community for this. I've never seen anything like this before. They'll come. Yeah. So we were able to do a big thing because of that.
Yeah. I'm going to be stealing that quote and saying it a lot. I love that. Pipeline is permission. I think that's a great way to think about it as a marketer and coach marketers on how to think about
good.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. As we wrap up, we've got 2 final questions. I always keep these the same, and they are intentionally vague, so you can take them anywhere you want. You can highlight something we already talked about or anything that pops in your head. And the first one is, there's a lot of bad best practices out there that many of us still follow. What's one widely held belief that go-to-market leaders or founders still believe that you think is bullshit, or at least no longer serving us?
That's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but one that pops in my head is this idea that brand building is different than demand building. I've often said a brand touch is a demand touch. A demand touch can be a brand or should be a brand touch. And so stop thinking that when you're doing demand gen and you're building leads and you're doing stuff for your sales team, it's not influencing the market in terms of defining who your brand is. And stop thinking that, oh, I'm running some fancy ads on Super Bowl that, are setting our brand up and I'm building brand. Stop thinking that that is isolated and separate from the pipeline that leads to demand. So I think this idea that I'm either doing brand or demand, is wrong. I think it's like you got to think it both ways. And especially in today's media environment where you have social media and people talking about you is so much of your brand. It's like the impression you get is from other people often. You know what I mean? Yeah, you can make brand investments, but a lot of it is what are people saying about you? So, and a lot of what people are saying about are they're being exposed to you in many ways, in a demand way from your employees, from your salespeople, from your partners. So it's like every touch is about brand and every touch is about generating customers, generating demand. So I think thinking of them as isolated things that can work independently of each other is bullshit.
hmm Such such great answer. I like that one a lot. I mean, brand. People have often said to me, "Yeah, your brand is just what people say about you when you're not in the room. Same as companies, same as people. That is your brand." Um, and okay, I love that. The lines are very much being blurred between brand and demand, more so than ever. Yeah.
Yeah, they have to work together. I mean, you can't. I don't think you should isolate them. They have to be hand in glove. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Final question as we wrap up. And we love to leave people with like something super actionable. And so, what's one tactic or strategy that leaders or founders can implement today that you think will help move the needle?
Oh gosh, that's such a great question. One tactic or strategy that they can implement today that will help them move their needle. I think one thing, when you think about people, hiring people, and I got this piece of advice from my boss, who got it from a mentor of his from Stanford, and he said, always hire people whose best years are ahead of them. And I thought, what? And I thought, well, wait, that is really good advice. That means you're hiring a learner. That means you're hiring someone with energy who's forward looking. That means you're hiring someone who's willing to invent and maybe has a playbook, but maybe willing to throw that playbook away and look at it differently. And I want to be clear because it is sort of startups are often about young, but you know what? It doesn't mean you're young. I mean, I look back at that advice that my boss had and I thought, oh, yeah, I fit that. I had my best years ahead of me and I was in my, early 40s. I mean, normally you'd say, oh, okay, I'm this grizzled marketing executive who has a playbook that she runs at every company she goes to. And that's what it is. That's not best years ahead of you. You know what I mean? Best years ahead of you is like, I've got experience and judgment, but I'm willing to try new stuff. I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about the technologies and new ways of doing my practice, my marketing, and I want to do it for this company. So I think that was just really good advice. So if you're interviewing or looking, even looking at people within your company for promotion, and especially in today's world where we have to be really smart about every person who's in our company today, whether they're there now or you're going to hire them, are they people who have their best years ahead of them, and therefore are they people you should be investing in and counting on and wanting to continue and wanting to grow and wanting to develop. So it applies even when you're thinking about promotion or difficult times, when you might have to do layoffs or you're thinking about who's going to be the next layer of leadership. You want people, no matter what their ages are, you want people whose best years are ahead of them.
Yeah, I think that comes down to just the growth mindset. I bet both of us on this call both believe our best years are still ahead of us. And I don't think I will ever lose that because it's about always wanting to learn, always wanting to get better. mindset.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's right. And I think that's a really important thing that you can start thinking differently today about your people and the people you want to bring in. Especially in an environment where where many companies are still retracting or holding steady. It's like, who are you betting on? In a lot of ways, it's like you're betting on the future, and you need people whose futures are the best years ahead of them. Yeah. So yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, Elissa, thank you so much for taking the time. That was
Thank
incredibly
you.
valuable.
Oh, well, thank you. It was fun, and I always love talking to you. And again, I love what GTM is doing. It's fun that just doesn't just hand out money, but helps people, helps companies, in a good way. Real practical and real. So it's a great thing.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of it. And thank you again for the time. And for all those listeners, thanks for hanging out with us. I always say, listening is one thing, executing is everything. Hopefully, you got something from this. Go apply it to your company, make some things happen, build some pipeline so you don't have to ask for permission. But thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.